The cold of Manchester seeped through the cracked window panes of the flat on Calder Street, where Lily Thompson lived with her family. It was a modest council flat in Moss Side, the walls stained with time, and the air often thick with tension. The living room bore the ghost of joy that never quite arrived. The silence inside wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It pressed down on Lily's chest like a secret no one dared to speak. Her father, Martin Thompson, was a man of routine. He would come home from the factory by 6:30, slam the front door, drop his steel-toed boots in the hallway, and head straight for the cupboard where the bottle of cheap whiskey waited. By 7, the shouting would start. Not always loud. Sometimes it was a low growl, a cutting remark thrown across the table. Her mother, Joanne, rarely fought back. She would just lower her eyes and continue stirring the stew, as if not hearing meant not hurting. At 15, Lily had learned to hold her breath when her father entered the room. Her younger brother, Connor, still had that spark of defiance in his eyes, but it was fading fast. He'd started mimicking their father's tone, his mannerisms, even the slouch of disappointment. Lily noticed. She always noticed. The worst part was the way everyone pretended nothing was wrong. At school, Lily would smile politely at her teachers, excel at her work, and never let on that she lived in a home that swallowed sound and suffocated light. She walked home slowly every day, dragging her feet, not because she was tired, but because she feared what might be waiting behind that peeling green door. One evening, as rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled through the cracks, Martin's voice echoed louder than usual. Something crashed. Joanne whimpered, and Lily felt her body freeze. Connor flinched on the sofa, but said nothing. Later that night, Lily sat in bed, the covers pulled up to her chin, heart thudding. She opened her diary and scribbled a single line. "I will not live like this forever." She didn't know how or when, but she knew something had to change. Every Tuesday after school, Lily escaped to the Hume Library. It was her sanctuary. The scent of old pages, the quiet rustle of turning paper, and the creaky floorboards offered a kind of comfort no one at home ever did. There, she could breathe. No shouting. No tension. Just quiet stories waiting to be heard. She usually tucked herself into the far corner by the window, next to the radiator that never worked properly. On that particular Tuesday, she was rereading Jane Eyre when someone tapped her shoulder. It was Amina Hussein, a girl from her English class. Amina was confident, outspoken, and always asked clever questions in lessons. Lily never imagined they had anything in common. "You like Bronte too?" Amina smiled, her dark curls bouncing as she sat across from Lily without waiting for an invitation. Lily hesitated, unsure how to respond to such unexpected friendliness. "I do." She sees things others pretend not to. Amina tilted her head, intrigued. "That's why I read. To see what people refuse to say out loud." It was the first conversation Lily had in weeks that wasn't clipped or cautious. Amina didn't just talk. She listened. Not with sympathy, but with understanding. As if she recognized the weight Lily carried without asking her to explain it. From that day on, the library wasn't just a hiding place. It became a meeting point. Every Tuesday, Lily and Amina would sit together, swapping books, exchanging stories. Lily found herself laughing quietly, even smiling on her walk home. She still dreaded the green door and what lay behind it, but something had shifted. A warmth had been planted, faint but growing. Weeks passed, and Amina began to ask questions. Not the intrusive kind, but careful ones. "Do you ever feel like you're the adult in your house? Or, why do some people hurt the ones they love the most?" Lily never answered directly, but her silences spoke volumes. One evening, after a particularly rough night, Lily arrived at the library looking drained. Amina didn't pry. She simply passed her a folded note before leaving early. Lily opened it once she was alone. "You are not your father's mistakes. You are not your mother's silence. You are your own beginning." Lily pressed the note to her chest and cried quietly, surrounded by books and whispers of who she could one day become. The house on Calder Street did not change, but Lily did. Bit by bit, She began to see through the cracks in the mask her family wore. At the dinner table, she stopped nodding in silence. She looked her father in the eye when he snapped at her. She no longer flinched when he raised his voice. It terrified her, yes, but something inside her had shifted. She was tired of pretending. Martin noticed. His tone grew colder. His silences more menacing. But Lily had learned from the books she read and from Amina, fear was a language bullies relied on. She would not speak it anymore. Connor, however, was slipping deeper into the pattern. He had started swearing at their mum, slamming doors, and stomping down the hall just like their father. Lily tried to speak to him once, just once, in hushed tones while he played video games in their shared room. "Connor," she said gently, "you don't have to turn into him." He didn't look up. Better to be like him than be weak. Lily felt something in her chest crack. Her brother wasn't angry. He was scared. This was his armor. This was his survival. Later that week, Lily stayed behind after school. She sat on a bench outside the science block, fiddling with the strap on her rucksack until Miss Parker, her form tutor, noticed her lingering. "You all right, Lily?" she asked, voice soft but steady. Lily hesitated. She was always careful, but something about Miss Parker's calmness made her nod. "Would it be all right if I stayed behind sometimes? Just to work?" Miss Parker seemed to understand without pressing. "Of course. This room's always open." That small offer became Lily's second refuge. Some days, she'd tidy bookshelves just to delay going home. Other days, she'd scribble in her notebook for hours, creating characters who lived without fear. But it couldn't last. One evening, Martin arrived home early and found Lily missing. When she returned at dusk, the look on his face stopped her in her tracks. "Out whoring about, are you?" he growled. Joanne stood frozen behind him. Connor peeked from the hallway, eyes wide. "No," Lily said, standing tall. "I stayed late at school." Martin took a step forward, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Don't lie to me, girl." "I'm not lying." The silence that followed was longer than usual. Tighter. The kind that held fists behind its back. But he didn't hit her. Not that night. He just stared, his jaw twitching, before storming into the kitchen and slamming the door. Joanne finally exhaled. Connor disappeared. And Lily, for the first time, didn't cry. Lily found the photograph while looking for an old charger in the hallway cupboard. It was tucked inside a box marked Christmas decorations, under tangled fairy lights and a dusty Santa hat. The photo was yellowed at the edges, creased but not torn. In it, a younger Joanne held baby Connor, smiling into the camera. And next to her, unbelievably, was Martin, clean-shaven, wearing a ridiculous Christmas jumper, his arm around Joanne's shoulders. They looked happy. Real, genuine, stupidly happy. Lily stared at the image for a long time. Her fingers trembled. That smile on Joanne's face, she had never seen it in real life. That softness in Martin's expression, it seemed impossible. It shook something loose inside her. It made her wonder what had broken them. Had life crushed them, or had they chosen to fall? She took the photograph to her room, tucked it inside one of her notebooks. She never mentioned it to anyone, but every so often, she would pull it out, trying to match the strangers in the photo to the ghosts who now haunted her house. Days turned colder. The first frost arrived early in Manchester that year. With it came the tension of Christmas. Joanne tried to string lights across the windows. Connor rolled his eyes, muttering that it was pointless. Martin barely looked up from the telly. Lily watched them silently, wondering how much longer she could keep pretending this was normal. One afternoon, Lily and Amina wandered through Chorlton Park. Their boots crunched on frozen leaves as they sipped hot chocolate from paper cups. It was there Lily finally said something real. "He wasn't always like this," she murmured, eyes fixed on the gray sky. "There's a photo." They were smiling. All of them. Amina didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, "My mum said people can break when they try to carry too much. Doesn't mean they should pass the weight on to others." Lily looked at her. "Do you think it's possible to fix someone?" "No," Amina replied. "But I think it's possible to stop them breaking you." Lily nodded slowly. The words settled in her bones. She was not responsible for saving anyone. Not even her mother. Not her brother. Not the man who called himself a father. That night, Lily placed the photograph back in the cupboard. She closed the box and shoved it deep under the shelves. She no longer needed to wonder who they used to be. Winter deepened. The wind bit harder. Streets in Manchester shimmered with sleet, and the breath of early evening felt like ice against the skin. At school, Lily's coat barely held off the cold, but she didn't complain. She was building something inside herself, something invisible, silent, and stubborn. She called it her quiet rebellion. It began with small acts. She stopped washing Martin's mug. She left her bedroom window cracked open at night just to feel the cold air, to remind herself she was alive. She no longer waited at the dinner table once she was done. She stood, walked away, and left the silence behind. Joanne noticed. Her eyes lingered longer. One evening, while Lily was folding laundry, Joanne whispered, "You're changing." Lily met her gaze. "Maybe I'm just becoming who I was meant to be." Joanne said nothing, but her hands trembled as she reached for a jumper to fold. At school, Miss Parker continued to let Lily stay after hours. Sometimes they talked. Nothing dramatic, nothing deep. Just conversation, the kind Lily never had at home. Amina joined them now and then, and the three of them laughed at silly things. It was strange how healing could look like laughter over spilled tea. But Martin could sense something slipping. One Sunday morning, during breakfast, he slammed his hand on the table. "You think you're better than us now, is that it?" Lily paused with her spoon halfway to her mouth. "No," she said calmly. "But I know I want something different." Martin's face flushed. "You ungrateful little—" Joanne intervened. "Martin, please." He turned on her instead. "This is your fault. You let her talk back. You made her soft." Lily stood up. Her heart was thudding, but her voice didn't shake. "No one made me anything. I choose who I am." For a moment, everything froze. Even Connor looked up from his phone. Martin didn't shout again. He simply walked out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. That day, Lily took a notebook and wrote down a list of everything she'd do differently if she ever had a family. Things like never shouting at dinner, asking how someone's day was, letting people cry without making them feel weak. It was a list of hope, of resistance, of rewriting what love looked like. And though no one else in the house saw it, it was her quietest and loudest rebellion. It was during the first week of January that Lily noticed the scar. Connor was washing his hands in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, when the faint line on his forearm caught the light. It wasn't fresh, but it hadn't always been there. A pale, thin mark, just long enough to raise questions. Lily waited until they were alone in the hallway. "What happened to your arm?" she asked gently. Connor stiffened. "Nothing." "Connor." He looked away. "I smashed a glass. Cut myself. That's all." But it wasn't all. She could see it in his eyes, the way they darted to the stairs, to the living room where Martin sat half asleep in front of a telly. Lily felt sick. She knew that look. She had worn it herself. Later that evening, she knocked on Connor's door. For once, he let her in. "You don't have to tell me," she said, sitting cross-legged on the carpet. "But I need you to know it's not your fault. Whatever he's said, whatever he's done, it's not your fault." Connor didn't respond at first. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "He gets so angry sometimes. Over nothing. And if I say anything back, Mom just tells me to be quiet." Lily's heart cracked open. "She's scared too," she murmured. "But she doesn't stop him," Connor replied bitterly. "She just lets it happen." Lily didn't argue. There was nothing to say that would make that better. So she stayed, just stayed, as her brother finally rested his head on her shoulder. It was a shift, not a solution but a shift. For the first time in a long time, they weren't surviving alone. And that meant something. The next day, Lily went back to Miss Parker after school. She asked her if she could volunteer at the community center library on weekends. "You're already stretched thin, Lily," Miss Parker said gently. "I know," Lily replied. "But it's the only place that feels like it isn't falling apart." Miss Parker didn't press further. She signed the form. That weekend, Lily shelved books, read to children, and met people who smiled with their eyes, not just their mouths. She felt like a person again, not a problem to fix. And on Sunday evening, she brought home a flyer from the library. It read, "Free family support drop-in sessions. No judgment. No pressure. Just help." She pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a fish. Joanne stared at it the next morning, her lips pressed into a tight line. But she didn't take it down. The house in Gorton rarely felt safe after dark. Shadows clung to the corners, and the silence between each door creak and distant car horn often carried the weight of what had not been said. But one night in February, something changed. It began with a flicker of light. The power had gone out briefly due to the storm. Lily had lit a candle in the kitchen while Joanne boiled water over the hob. Connor was upstairs, headphones on. Martin was out, a rare blessing. As the wind howled and rain lashed against the windows, Lily found herself sitting at the table with her mother, the warm flicker of the candle softening everything it touched. Joanne looked older in that light, tired. Her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea, but her gaze was distant, locked somewhere far away. "I saw the flyer," she said suddenly. Lily said nothing. "I didn't throw it away." Lily nodded. "I noticed." Joanne's voice was quieter than the storm outside. "I don't know how to fix all this, Lily. I don't even know where to start." For the first time, Lily reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "You don't have to fix it all," she said. "You just have to stop pretending it's not broken." Joanne let out a breath, shaky and fragile. "You always were the strong one." "No," Lily replied. "I was just the one who got tired first." They sat there, fingers interlocked, as the candle burned down and the lights suddenly flickered back to life. But they didn't move. They stayed in the quiet, together. And the light, that fragile, trembling light, stayed on. The next morning, Lily came downstairs to find the flyer now pinned neatly, not with a fish magnet, but with a small silver pin Joanne must have dug out of an old drawer. It was a symbol, and Lily understood it. Things weren't fixed, but something had shifted. That evening, Martin came home drunk, loud, slamming cupboards. But Joanne didn't cower. She didn't raise her voice either. Instead, she stepped in front of Lily and Connor and said clearly, "You're not going to do this here. Not tonight." Martin stopped, confused, blinking. And then, for the first time ever, he left without a word. Lily's hands trembled, but her heart felt steady. The cycle was bending. Not breaking yet, but bending. It happened on a Thursday. Rain fell steadily on the cracked pavement outside St. Matthew's Primary. Lily had come early to pick up Connor. She liked to be there before the bell rang, liked to be the first face he saw as he walked out with his bag slung over one shoulder and his tired eyes scanning the crowd. But that day, something was different. Martin was there. He leaned against the iron fence, cigarette between his fingers, the collar of his coat pulled high. His presence cast a shadow, even on that dull gray afternoon. Lily's stomach twisted. Her mind raced. She looked around. No sign of Joanne. No one to stop him if things turned sour. The bell rang. Children burst from the front doors like water through a broken dam, all chatter and motion. Connor was among them. When he spotted Martin, his steps faltered. Martin straightened. "All right, lad," he called. Connor froze. Lily stepped forward. "Connor. Over here." He looked between them, uncertain. His small frame tense, like a deer caught between two directions. Martin took a step closer. "Come on, don't be daft." But Lily saw the flash in Connor's eyes. Fear, yes, but also something harder. Something growing. Something that did not want to obey anymore. She spoke calmly, but loud enough. "Connor, you can come with me. You don't have to go anywhere you don't feel safe." A teacher was nearby now, frowning, alert to the tension. Connor hesitated for only a second longer. Then he ran to Lily. Martin's face twisted into something sharp and bitter. "This is what she's done to you," he spat. But Lily didn't flinch. She took Connor's hand. "This is what he's done to us," she replied steadily. They walked away together, past rows of parents and parked cars. Lily could feel the weight of what had just happened settle over them like fog, but she also felt the break. The clean, painful, necessary break. That night, Joanne made a decision. She called the number on the flyer. She booked an appointment. Not for herself. For them all. And when Lily overheard the phone call from the hallway, she didn't cry. She just closed her eyes. And breathed. The weeks that followed felt like a strange kind of awakening. Joanne began attending the support group she had found through the flyer. Lily and Connor started to see a different side of their mother, one less tired, less afraid. Martin's visits became less frequent. When he came, Joanne answered the door with a firmness that hadn't been there before. One chilly morning, Lily stood by the kitchen window, watching the world outside, the familiar streets of Moss Side, the sound of children playing, the distant hum of the city waking up. She felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Connor was drawing at the table, humming softly. Joanne was preparing breakfast, her movements steady. That day, Joanne told them about the new things she was learning. About boundaries, about self-respect, about breaking cycles that had lasted generations. "It won't be easy," she said, "but we're going to try." Lily smiled, feeling the weight of that promise settling into their small home. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt like a place where things could grow. The day came when Lily stood outside the community center in Moss Side, waiting for the group meeting to start. She held a small folder close to her chest, a collection of stories, memories, and lessons learned. Joanne, Connor, and even Martin were all there, each in their own way trying to rewrite the story that had been passed down through generations. Lily spoke first. Her voice steady, clear. "I used to think I was destined to live the same life as my parents. That the cycle of fear and silence was unbreakable. But I learned that the first step to breaking it is to speak out. To face the pain instead of hiding from it." Joanne nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. Martin looked uncomfortable, but he did not walk away. Connor, clutching his mother's hand, looked up at the room full of strangers and smiled. They were not perfect. They still had miles to go. But in that room, under the dull fluorescent lights, something fragile and powerful was born. A new beginning. A break in the cycle.